Good evening, guys. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. So, as I told you before, I'm going to be bringing incredible people doing amazing work, making real impact in different areas of our lives. So, today I'm going to be having a conversation with two gentlemen who are doing some amazing work with the International Federation of Liberal Youth, an organization that is working around promoting the values of freedom and also strengthening democracy and globalizing freedom. So let's jump right into it. I'm gonna let you introduce yourself.
Sure. My name is Krijn van Eden. I am the executive director, which is basically the head of office for the International Federation of Liberal Youth. We're a federation of liberal organizations from all over the world. So they are basically our members, but they're also the people who are basically the highest decision-making body of our organization. They elect a bureau every 2 years, more or less. And it is then up to the bureau to run this organization and decide what we do basically. But even though we've existed for quite a long time, we've been founded in 1947. I think I don't quite know when we started doing these kinds of seminars, but at least for the last, I would say, 3 to 5 years, maybe a bit more actually, our main activity has been organizing seminars with young people in different places all around the world: Europe, Africa, Asia, Latin America. And the point of these seminars is to allow young activists and people who are interested in doing politics, social and political questions, to actually come together as young people and learn from each other.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. So you already answered like two of my questions already in that response. So probably I'm gonna give our friend a chance to also introduce himself first.
I am Benjamin Fivet. I'm from France, and I'm one of the vice presidents of IFLRY. So as Krijn here was saying, we are as a vice president and part of the bureau, which is the political decision-making body of IFLRY. We are elected by the General Assembly, but as a day-to-day decision, we make them. And Krijn is being very modest. Like we run the organization, which is not where we make most of the decision, but Krijn over there as executive director is the one who really runs the operations on a day-to-day basis. And thanks to him, that we have a successful organization that does so many things. And Krijn mentioned a lot about the seminars that we are doing, and that's our main activities. Of course, as a political organization, most of our members are a young organization of young liberals that are very often associated to political parties, not always. And that's the thing that makes all the common theme, or the common, the word escapes me, but what's common between all the organizations is they are all liberals. So they have a liberal view on how to do politics, and as you want, like, to believe in the rule of law, human rights, freedom of speech, all those things. And not all organizations that believe this are necessarily associated to a political party. So we also have organizations that are not in party politics, but are still liberal in approach, maybe NGOs in some cases. And that's why we have this mix of organizations we work with, which are both NGOs and political parties. And that's what we had here this weekend, this week in Nairobi. We had a few people who are representing youth wings of political parties, and a few people who are representing NGOs that try to promote democracy and youth engagement here in Kenya or in Tanzania and other countries from East Africa that were here. And I think, yeah, that's the two sides of our organization. We are working with NGOs and also with a political organization. And of course, we have this part where we are more political. So when we have a General Assembly, for example, membership might decide on resolution, on manifesto. So this is more political. We actually discuss and decide all together and vote in conflicting positions sometimes. But we have a nice liberal debate in a constructive way. and we define what is the position of the organization, and that's what we do at our general assemblies that happen every 6 months.
Awesome. Now, I know that IFLRY is centered on the ideas of freedom, right? So, could you please like share with us about some of your programs or some of the programs that you consider most important within the organization?
Well, I mean, we do exactly besides doing the seminars, we have I think around like 8-9 programs. They include human rights, free trade, but also regional ones. Like we have a Eastern Europe program,
Latin America,
Latin America
Africa,
program.
of course.
Yes. In terms of what they do, it's mostly just bringing together also people around like policy discussions basically. And in that sense, it's also about bringing together different perspectives, because you often find that like I'm trying to think of a good example. I mean, trade relations as well, I think, which like there's not, or and actually I think no, a better example is migration. Yeah, because what is very interesting is that we have quite a lot of members from the Middle East as well, and of course like there's a lot of migration happening both through the Middle East and from the Middle East into Europe. And what's very interesting about that is that, for example, a country like Lebanon, which has, I mean, a huge number of refugees. I think I wouldn't be surprised if it's about 30% of the country is now refugees from Syria.
Wow.
And I probably wouldn't have known that statistic if I wasn't in IFLRY and I wasn't talking to people from Lebanon as much as I am. And I think in that way it really shows sort of like the strength of IFLRY and the network is that instead of being sort of limited to your own perspective and your own national perspective, you actually, by getting to know people personally in the network, become much more aware of things that are happening outside of your country or outside of your region, that you otherwise just would not be aware of.
Perfect. So I'm a liberal, and I believe that the ideas of freedom really open up regions for economic development. And I know that the work that you're doing is really important. So I was really interested specifically to know about the Caucasus program and the scope, whether or not you have like part of it running programs here in Africa or not.
The Caucasus program is a program that is basically specifically for the Southern Caucasus region, which is a region between Russia and Turkey, basically, which comprises the countries of Georgia, Azerbaijan, and Armenia. And so, like, that program specifically focuses on that region, and I think we had a seminar there last year as well that was focusing on disinformation and propaganda, which there's a lot of in that region.
Awesome,
But rebounding on that, so talking about the regional programs, we specifically have, I want to mention because we are here in Kenya, but the Africa program, which we are making evolve a little bit, because we created it at first to bring African organization, young liberal African organization together, so they could create their own organization. And they did that last year in Dakar. They created ALIF, the African Liberal Youth for Freedom, which is the official name. And they are now organized, politically they can organize themselves there. And now we're trying to move the Africa program more to a dialogue or discussion that will bring the African liberal youth to talk and discuss with youth for over the world that have an interest also in Africa, because of course we've seen in recent years that sometimes a misunderstanding between the Africa and youth in Europe. So we want to bring this discussion. So that's one of the things the Africa program will do, and I think also we'll be trying to do more capacity building here in Africa. But this dialogue thing that Brian was mentioning, learning things from people who are from other regions of the world and learning from them, I think is really a very important aspect of this program, and that's why we focus it. It's really only a few months since we started aiming it in that direction. But we have a good thing coming, I think.
Now, it's very difficult. Like I told you, I was just having a conversation with a member of parliament from South Africa earlier on, and what come of that conversation is that it's very difficult to get liberal-minded people elected into political office. I don't know much about how this happens in Europe, but at least I know about Africa. It's very difficult. So we have a lot of young people who are involved in mainstream politics, and they're liberal-minded. They understand how important these ideas are for our continent, but it's very difficult for us to get someone actually elected into office. So we're just sharing and trying to find out, like, what is the barrier?
So what I think is really interesting about this, and essentially, as a European, I come from this like the other way. Whereas for me, it was actually through IFLRY that my eyes were opened at like how certain liberal ideas and liberal values that in Europe we take so for granted that like we can't even really imagine people not thinking in that way. Then you come to countries in the Middle East, in Africa, and in other places, and you realize like, oh, this idea that like you are an individual and that it's not your parents who should decide what you do, or that maybe also again in Europe at some age like you're considered even by your parents like an adult. And then of course on the one hand they're still your parents, but on the other hand they're also respecting you as an equal.
Exactly, make your own decisions.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think in some ways even though I think I would like IFLRY to focus more on economic freedom as well, actually, what I think we end up focusing more on is democracy and individual freedom. And this is also why we do so much around female leadership, because we feel that particularly, in places where these liberal values are less common and less accepted and less understood, the idea that women should also have the freedom to make their own decisions, start their own organizations, and just be an independent part of society and economic life.
Yeah.
Is something that, this really only by like bringing people together and like having a seminar with them. Do you give them the space to actually not only just think about this abstractly, but actually being around people who also respect people in that way?
Sure, yeah.
And